Bonjour à tous et bonjour à tous nos auditeurs. Merci de vous être connectés aujourd'hui. Aujourd'hui, c'est une journée un peu spéciale, sur un format un peu spécial qui va être en anglais, parce qu'on reçoit aujourd'hui l'un des dirigeants du ANC aux États-Unis, donc qui est le bureau de la cause arménienne aux États-Unis, Aram Hamparian. Thank you, Aram. Welcome, and welcome to our listeners that are coming today. Thank you for accepting our invitation.
Well, thank you for this invitation. I'm very, very glad to be with you today.
Well, I guess that there is not a single Armenian in the world who hasn't seen that Joe Biden's statement recognizing the Armenian genocide last week. Well, we know the exceptional role played by the ANC, and I would like to thank you at the beginning of this interview for your work, for the dedication, for everything you've done, and what the ANC has done in this. Thank you very much.
Well, you're very much a team effort. So I'll accept that thanks on behalf of many, many people.
Well, thank you. Thank you to everyone. Well, obviously, we're going to talk about what happened with Joe Biden the last few weeks. But first, can you tell us what is the ANC? How does the ANC work?
Sure. The Armenian National Committee of America is an organization that's been around, been active for as long as there have been Armenians in America. And that really dates back to the 1890s. And in different names, under different banners, we've spoken up for Americans of Armenian heritage. We've built coalition partnerships. We've tried to make sure that our voice is heard in the American government. A lot of that work takes place with the U.S. Congress, which is like the more representative branch of our government, but also with the executive branch and at times with the courts. So we engage in our system, which is a federal system, with the federal government, the national government, foreign policy, things of that sort. With the state governments, and there's a lot that happens at the state level, including education, and also at the local level, at the municipal level. So we're active at 3 levels of government and within at least 2 of the 3 branches of government, sort of the executive and legislative branches. And, you know, we make a moral case for why we think our policies are the right policies. We present the facts, and we also organize ourselves politically so that we're a relevant stakeholder in the American political system. So on issues like the genocide or Artsakh or U.S.-Armenia relations, you know, that we can move policy. That's ultimately what we're after, moving policy. And even though, you know, people know about Haiastan and the work that takes place in France and the work that takes place in America, what sometimes they might not see is amid all the diversity of so many different things we're working on, that it's all aligned with one goal, one North Star, which is the future, the viability, the survival of Armenia. Our place, right, at the table of nations is what we're out to preserve. Thankfully, countries like France and America don't have to worry about their very existence as a people, but Armenia does. And I think that has always added a special urgency to the work of Haiastan around the world.
Yes, thank you very much. Let's talk about Joe Biden, because I'm pretty sure that that's the main matter that everyone is interested about. For several days leading up to April 24, we've read press articles about Joe Biden's potential recognition. Then we heard that he had a call with Erdogan, so we were all scared about that. And then we've seen this statement talking about Armenian genocide. I mean, is it the way you expected? Is it like, what can you say about that?
Well, first of all, in politics, nothing ever works out the way you expect it. There's you know, Mike Tyson is a famous boxer, and he said, everybody has a plan until they punch you in the face, and then you fight, you know, and you see how it works out. But there are some major pieces here that have been put in place, and these weren't put in place in the days and weeks before April 24th. These were put in place years and decades before. So we worked, for example, at the municipal level to get cities and towns to recognize the Armenian genocide, starting very small in the 1960s, and then worked our way up to the point where 49 of the 50 states have recognized the Armenian genocide. That's a lot of work. We worked with the media, with newspapers and TV stations, to get them to stop using the word alleged before the Armenian genocide. That took decades of work. We worked in Congress to build support for legislation on the Armenian genocide, and we saw that come to fruition in 2019 when the House and Senate passed these resolutions almost unanimously. So the various pieces were in place. We had the facts and we presented them very comprehensively. We have the morality on our side, and we made that case, I think, very passionately. And then we had to look for the right opportunities, organize ourselves politically and look for the right opportunities. And the right opportunity came along through a combination of factors, right? And they're political factors because we live in a political world, right? We did our work, we were ready, we organized, but several things came together. Erdogan just is making, it's like his calling card is sticking his finger in the eyes of the West and defending his people who he would normally think were his allies. And so he's alienated a lot of friends. He's run out of friends, frankly, across Europe and the US. And then you had President Biden in office. And President Biden is an important piece of this equation in that he had a 35-year record of supporting this issue as a senator. It's our understanding that he was on the right side of this issue when he was vice president. And of course, he was the vice president, not the president. So you have all of our work, the right president, and I guess Erdogan being Erdogan, and the stars aligned, and we're able to build on the House and Senate votes by getting presidential recognition. So I think it's an important lesson on a lot of levels. It's a lesson in doing your work, but never believing that just that is going to get the job done. It also means having a moral case, a factual case, strong politics, strong organizing, make yourself very relevant, impossible to ignore, impossible to oppose, ultimately, and then work with the opportunities as they arise. And in this case, the various stars aligned. And I think we performed, I think an important, there's a lot of different levels of this, something we could talk about, but certainly it's very good for the Armenians to have a greater understanding of the genocide that happened and that is still being perpetrated against our people. I think that awareness is very important for Armenian security, but it's also a good thing for the world, right? This precedent, the example that Turkey set of, I can do whatever I want. I can kill an entire people. I can commit genocide. I can lie about it. I can consolidate it. I can rip down the churches and desecrate the cemeteries. And I can do all of this because I can bully and bribe the world into silence. Well, guess what? This was a chance for America. It took a long time. It took way too long. It took too much effort on our part. We shouldn't have had to struggle this long and this hard. But we finally sent a message to Turkey that there are some things you cannot buy. And that's a good message.
Yes, definitely. I mean, what are the consequences of this recognition? I mean, will that change something in your way of working, in the way INCA works? Sure.
Well, first, let me say this, that we have to make sure that this recognition by the president is reflected in the rest of the foreign policy system. And sadly, this system has been institutionalized for decades to live in fear of Turkey, to walk on eggshells around Ankara, and to always be like hypersensitive to, oh my God, if you use the genocide word, Turkey will get upset and you'll get fired. So to the point where we've actually had conversations with people at the State Department who didn't use the word genocide just because their fears are so ingrained that they're people who have gotten out of prison but who still think they're in prison, and that's going to take some time to work through and to convince these American officials that
they can use that word.
Yeah, that they can speak in an American voice. That's one part of it. Another part is locking this in terms of memorials, statues, museums, things of that sort, annual observances. So locking it in. There's also the education component. The federal government in our system isn't the main branch of government dealing with education, but there are things that can be done at the federal level to encourage education in American schools about the Armenian genocide. There are 14 states now that include the Armenian genocide in some capacity in their school lesson plans. We have to increase the education and maybe go from 14 to 24 to 34 states. There's the highlighting the genocide recognition to underscore Azerbaijan and Turkey's continued genocidal intent against the Armenians, and I'll get to that in a second. And then, of course, there's reparations and how this can lead to the justice that the Armenians deserve. Let me touch on those 2 points I made. When it comes to justice, the common conception of justice, I think, held by almost every society or civilization, is something like, if a wrong has been done, the victim must be made whole. We must return what we can return, and we must compensate that which cannot be returned. Those are like some very, very basic ideas, and you could travel the world, and I think there's that general sense of that's what justice is. Justice is not an apology. Justice is not an acknowledgement. Justice is making the victim whole. I posted a couple of days ago a quote by Malcolm X on the subject. He said, if you stab me 9 inches deep with a knife and then pull it out 3 inches, that's not progress. Even if you take the knife out all the way, that's not progress. Heal the wound, make the victim whole. That's progress. And I think that speaks to us. So the question of justice, the elements of viability that sustained the Armenian nation for thousands of years, they were stolen from us. They were taken from us. Our land, our agricultural resources, our water resources, our defensible borders, our trade routes, all the things that sustained us, very nearly all of them were taken from us. They need to be restored. Our place at the table of nations needs to be restored. So that's what justice means. And this can be a step toward that justice. The U.S. has moved along a spectrum on this issue, from outright denial to complicity and denial to recognition. And now we have to move from recognition to pro-reparations position. And these are steps that take time. Nothing has ever been given to us for free on this issue. Believe me, people think that American recognition was granted. No, American recognition was taken. I know that because I've done it with my hands and in concert with thousands of people, many of whom are no longer with us on the many of whom lived their lives, were born and died in an era of American complicity with the Armenian genocide. That is a shame. It is a shameful thing. I say that as an American. I'm ashamed that my government couldn't speak the truth for decade upon decade. My own parents were born and died in that paradigm, and that's not right. No other people, Armenian or not, should ever have to deal with that. So that's the reparations part. The policy part is equally important. If we have a policy of recognition and then we don't do anything to constrain Turkey or Azerbaijan from continuing that crime, then that runs counter to the recognition. And I'll give one example. I think you're very familiar with the Section 907 of the Freedom Support Act is a policy that cuts aid to Azerbaijan. Well, President Biden, within hours of recognizing the Armenian genocide, opened the door to U.S. assistance to Azerbaijan. That's basically arming, that's basically assisting, that's basically abetting a country that wants to continue, is openly committed to continuing the Armenian genocide. And here we are helping them do that. And that's wrong. The recognition of the Armenian genocide should have translated immediately into no U.S. military assistance to Azerbaijan or Turkey for that matter, but instead it resulted in just the opposite within hours. Now that may be some kind of political balancing act that the administration is trying to do, but recognition is not, in my opinion, something that should be done lightly, and it should not. I'll say it this way: recognition comes with responsibilities. If in our own lives we see, for example, a child is being abused, to recognize that abuse and not do anything to prevent it from being continued or perpetuated, well, that's a hollow recognition. That's not recognition at all. That's in fact, checking a box to perhaps make ourselves feel good. But the goal here is to recognize something's wrong and remedy that wrong. That's the purpose of this. We didn't, for example, condemn apartheid in South Africa in the 1980s simply to let it continue. We don't condemn the tobacco industry for selling, addictive product to young people without trying to prevent those sales to young people. We don't, recognize the ill effects of pollution on the environment just to recognize it. No, we recognize it so that we can end it, so we can fix it, so we can make things better. So we are very troubled actually by that decision, and we're hoping that the administration will revisit it.
Can you? I mean, you talked about it, and it was supposed to be one of my questions, but it's very interesting. Like, it happened like few days later. Like he said, I recognize the Armenian genocide, and then like I don't know what, 1 day, 2 days, I don't know, like maybe a week later, then he said like he's waving that ban, and like he can send some arms or sell arms to Azerbaijan. I mean, how can these bans be reapplied? How can ANC work to like bring that back? How can we do that? Yeah,
that's what we have to do. We have to work. Well, if the White House has chosen to waive this, it's an annual waiver. We certainly will voice our very strident opposition to that. But now we have to work legislatively to roll that back, to limit that, to mitigate the harms caused by that. The previous administration sent over $100 million in military aid to Azerbaijan. That made them a stronger country and allowed them to shift resources to offensive capabilities against Artsakh and Armenia. There are reports that aid was directly applied to the attack on Artsakh and Armenia. So this should have been the recognition clearly should have translated into a strict enforcement of Section 907. And when I say this, I think it's worth sharing that this was also the position of Joe Biden as a candidate. He publicly called on the Trump administration to fully enforce Section 907, to not waive Section 907. That was a strong position to take as a candidate. He was right to take it then, but he was wrong to waive it now.
Yeah, it's very interesting because we have the same feeling in France. Well, very usually and very often, French government and French politicians, they always say that they're with us. They say no to Armenian genocide. They say that they remember. They say that they will never let that happen again. And at the same time, we heard that they're selling weapons. They are helping Azerbaijan. It's very difficult to work in high-tech field, doing all this work, and then at the end of the day realize that it's still money. It's still like arms. It's still more important than human lives. But like what we have in France, and it's also interesting, we have public opinion. Well, most of French citizens are with us. They understand what's going on. They feel very close to Armenia. Is it the same in the US? Do you feel like the public opinion is with you?
I think the warmth in France is greater, and I also think that the awareness of Armenia and Armenians is greater. Just the average French citizen probably knows more about Armenia than the average American citizen.
Oh, okay.
But the zone or the realm of awareness in the U.S. system is growing. It's growing through our work in the schools. It's growing through the human rights community. It's growing through the foreign policy community. There was a ceiling put on Armenian issues by Turkish denial. The foreign policy community would typically be very chilly or cold on Armenian issues, precisely because that was viewed as the price of friendship with Turkey. Turkey said, okay, we'll be your regional ally, but you must ostracize and alienate, and undermine the Armenian community and the things that they believe in. And that was kind of a trade-off, very, very ugly trade-off. But I think that as Erdogan takes Turkey in an increasingly hostile direction, as we continue our work, I think that we're just going to see the awareness of our issues increase over time. I think when the Turks committed the genocide, I imagine, thought that understanding of that crime would drop over time, but in fact, it's increased over time. And in fact, you could mark by almost any metric, whether it's in publications or books or citations in scholarship, from 1965 till today, the Armenian genocide is mentioned more every year than the previous year. And I think, and then you add to that the awareness of Armenia, people who travel to Armenia, people who have Armenian relatives, and then the role of the diaspora. I think our role in the civic arena has really increased since the genocide resolutions passed, and now with the presidential recognition. I think there are people who look at us as a community that, while we may be small in numbers, we have like an outsized influence. We have, I think, we're respected as a highly networked, highly motivated group. And I think we also, a lot of bait was put in the water. A lot of attempts to get us to water down our cause or to trade in our cause or just settle for good enough or just meet the Turks halfway. It's like, there's no halfway on genocide. There's no halfway on truth. I think that the left and the right in America, put a lot of opportunities before us to just sell this issue out, and we never did, and we kept ownership of this issue in our hands. This has never been instrumentalized. I mean, politicians have tried to instrumentalize it or weaponize it in their own conflicts, but we don't believe in that. We don't accept the idea that anyone else is the owner of the Armenian issue. We kept it even through difficult years, even when there might have been temptations, right, to say, well, let's. I think the U.S. government funded the Turkish-Armenian Reconciliation Commission, like a totally fake Ankara-sponsored effort to dumb down the genocide from a conflict, from a crime to a conflict. Right? A crime requires justice. A conflict, you talk it through, right? That's what they want to do. Then they did the protocols, which was another enterprise like that. And over the years, there's been many, many projects like this. But I think what people saw is, in the overwhelming votes in the House and Senate, and in the strong recognition by President Biden, they saw the result of a community that was persistent and principled and never compromised and saw the issue through to its completion. I think that's I think that's good. I think our stock increased and rose as a result.
No, it's all of hope. So I have a question about that, because we were talking about Armenian genocide. We were talking about increasing the awareness of that question, but there's still a genocide going on right now. I mean, a genocidal mind, like Azerbaijan is still trying to erase Armenia from the map. And we can see, like, I'm sure you've seen that, the trophy park, in which like Aliyev is walking through like Armenian bodies and he's proud. And like we can see Azerbaijani like kids walking there and like being proud of that. It's very alarming. So what can we do for present day Armenia? We've heard that just like today, like a few hours ago, that 20 Armenian captives have been killed and tortured. This is a very, very important issue, and like we feel like we're sometimes useless in that issue, because some people say that it's Armenian government, it's their job. How can we help that? How can we help them? How can we help these people?
Okay, it is true that Turkey and Azerbaijan are pivoting from a more what you might describe as a pure denialist position to, and this is like a sick and twisted thing, to an actual posture of pride.
Yes.
So it's I guess having lost the battle for truth, they're trying to reframe this as just pure power. That, you know what, we did it.
We're doing it again. Yes.
We are doing it again. What are you going to do about it? It's like, Hivante, it's a sick and twisted thing. So that is true. And I think as other pieces of the puzzle fall in place, let's say England or Israel and others, I think you're very likely that we'll see Turkey move more in that direction of just embracing genocide and believing that it was a holy cause that they need to complete. That being said, it is true that Azerbaijan and Turkey are getting away with a lot, but it's also true that we have resources and capabilities to fight against that. And in any given battle, I would say on any given day, Turkey and Azerbaijan will have advantages that we don't have, because they're extremely powerful states. They're very powerful states, especially Turkey. So their ability to pull the trigger on a short-term tactic is going to be greater than ours, right? But our ability over the midterm and longer term to put in place really important pieces that advance, let's say, a more balanced, fair, truthful view of the region, I think those rest in our hands. I think if there are things that can be done politically, right, where you organize yourself politically, will prevail in those contexts, but over not just on any given day, but over a longer iteration, over a longer period of time. So in the political world, we have advantages Turkey doesn't have. In the moral world, in the sort of ethical space, I think we own that space. But again, those things don't translate into reality in this day, this week, this month. It just takes time. In terms of the facts, I think the facts are clearly on our side. It's I guess our struggle on so many high-tide issues, Artsakh, Armenia, genocide, we just have to understand that it's highly asymmetrical. So if tomorrow Turkey hires a former member of Congress so they can buy American F-35s, let's say, they can write a check for $5 million or $2 million, whatever it is, and just that kind of short-term tactic is available to them in ways that it's not available to us, but other things are available to us. So I would just counsel never being discouraged by the asymmetry. That's just the battle we're in, right? So we have to recognize where our assets are, what our assets are, and how we deploy them, how we organize, and how we act in a smart and assertive manner in the political world. But it's not always going to match like apples for apples or oranges for oranges, and that's just the nature of it. And Armenia has its place, and Armenia should do what a state can do. Armenia has a seat at the UN, but I think there are times when the Armenian moral compass rests in the diaspora, and the center of Armenian gravity rests in the diaspora. This depends, on the governance of Armenia, and we've had good governance and bad governance in Armenia. And I will say very frankly, Anahit, that sometimes international actors set a ceiling on an Armenian issue at the level that the Armenian government is comfortable with, and we're not actually comfortable with that formula at all. So let's say the Pashinyan government has this or that level of interest in the prisoner issue for reasons foreign or domestic, and those are political calculations they'll make. That's not going to influence how aggressively we attack the prisoner issue. It is a god-awful outrage. And to read the report this morning about 19 Armenian civilians and soldiers killed in captivity is outrageous to us. It is infuriating to me as an American that my government to this day calls them detainees, not prisoners of war, unworthy apparently of the protections of the Third Geneva Convention. So there is a very, very significant dynamic that I think you cited about, where is Yerevan, where is the diaspora? I would say that, we do what we think is right. Obviously, we answer to our American leadership, right? ANC is an American organization. We answer to Americans of Armenian heritage who are in our leadership in the same way that the community in France you're fully French, and you have all the rights of French citizens, and you exercise those. And I think that we're all playing our part. I think that I've long held, and I think the High Tide movement has long understood that the formula of just Haiastan, just Artsakh on its own in this terrible region is never going to be sufficient. It's going to require not just the 3 million Armenians on our homeland, but the 10 million worldwide. It has to be a team effort, and even then, it's a challenge. But we all have to bring our best effort.
Definitely. You talk about American leadership, and I would like to get back to U.S. policy, because we heard that Lynn Tracy, U.S. ambassador in Armenia, she went to Sunni for the first time, I think, and that happened in times where Sunni is endangered. When Aliyev, he constantly say that he wants to take Zangezur, he constantly say that Zangezur is his, like he's saying things like that, and then at the same time we have this ambassador, she's going there. What can you say about that? What can you say about her work? What can you say about U.S. policy in Armenia?
Well, sad to say, we want every American ambassador to succeed. We want them to be successful and effective. We want the full staff, to kind of realize the potential of the U.S.-Armenian relationship. But sadly, we really haven't seen that unaided. We really haven't seen that. From the first days of the war, our embassy, our mission in Yerevan was tone deaf, talking about everything else but the existential attack on the Armenian people, the thousands of deaths, the thousands of injuries, the loss of indigenous land. None of this was discussed, and at least the public profile of the embassy was everything but this issue, and that's heartbreaking for us. In our history, we have the experience or the memory of Ambassador Morgenthau, who was the ambassador to the Aram Empire, who was like a pillar of strength, like a model of American morality and leadership, and we're clearly not there, and that's very sad. The trip to Sunik, I like to think it was an expression of concern for Sunik and the sovereignty of Armenia. I don't know. It was never explained. We really need a pivot here. We need a reset in U.S.-Armenian relations. Just consider for a moment how many democracy lectures have been delivered in Baku by the U.S. ambassador to Azerbaijan. I don't remember any. Where are the democracy programs? They were thrown out. Azerbaijan, the country that needs a lesson in democracy, just gets a total free pass. Armenia, a country decimated, a homeland decimated, a generation destroyed by Azeri aggression, gets lectures on democracy. And the country, Azerbaijan, that commits the violence gets the military aid, but not Armenia. We really need a fundamental reset in U.S.-Armenia policy. A few less lectures and a lot more support for the security, the sovereignty, the survival of Armenia.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm going to take some questions because I can see that we have some questions here. Meline Matosian, she's asking, regarding Artsakh, do you think President Biden has a fixed strategy about it? If so, what is it or could be? Do you think he may try to retake the lead of the Minsk group?
I mean, repeat the first part of the question.
Regarding Artsakh, do you think President Biden has a fixed strategy about it? If so, what is it or could be?
Well, I would say that coming into the Biden administration, and we were very hopeful about the Biden administration, we looked at sort of three tests of the Biden administration. The first is genocide recognition, and he showed great strength and recognized the Armenian genocide, set aside the Turkish threats, and A+ for President Biden for speaking truthfully about the Armenian genocide. The conditions were there for him, right? And certainly he had the record, but he did the right thing, and others have done the wrong thing, so he deserves credit for that. The next two tests are humanitarian assistance to Artsakh and Section 907. The total U.S. aid to Artsakh since the war, basically, or for refugees from Artsakh, or all those suffering from the effects of the Artsakh war, I forget exactly the phrasing they use, but it means Armenians and Azeris, has been around $4.5 million during a period in which the United States has generously provided hundreds of millions, even billions of dollars for Yemen, for Burma, for Ethiopia, and other crises around the world. Very, very modest spending for Artsakh. And then we saw the waiver of Section 907, which took U.S. policy in exactly the wrong direction. Will the U.S. reassert leadership in the Minsk group? We certainly hope so. The signs have not been very positive, but we're hopeful that Ambassador Schofer or whoever represents the U.S. in that position will, assume a robust role in that process and recognize that Azerbaijan's the aggressor, recognize that Armenia suffered terribly from this aggression, and try to rebalance things in that part of the world. We haven't seen very many signs of that, but we remain hopeful and we're pushing very hard.
Okay, thank you very much. And maybe what about Minsk group? Do you have any information about that?
When Aliyev invited the Minsk group co-chairs to Baku, I don't know if you guys recall seeing the video of that. He just read the riot act to the three representatives of the U.S., France, and Russia. And I was troubled as an American to see my representative just sit there and take it and allow himself to be spoken to in the most disrespectful and offensive terms, both in terms of the words spoken and the tone adopted by President Aliyev against the representative of the United States. This is, Andrew Schofer is an individual. He's a diplomat. He's a person, but he also is our voice, our representative. He's there representing every last American citizen, and it hurt me. It hurt me terribly to see Aliyev disrespect the United States in that terrible way. And we're hoping that can be turned around, and that it can be Aliyev can be brought to understand that that's simply not the way you deal with the United States of America. That the United States is an important stakeholder in this process. I think that the process will improve, by a more robust French, more robust U.S. Participation.
I'm pretty sure you've seen that in when Ursula von der Leyen, she went to see Erdogan and she didn't have a chair. People talked about it because they were like, what is this? I mean, you represent the whole European Union, and he's treating you like nothing.
Well, I think that it's not an accident. That's definitely not an accident.
Definitely it's not.
Yeah. I think that they've gone beyond it's sort of like a parallel to the genocide issue. They've gone beyond feeling bad about any of this. It's like, you don't like it? Too bad. That's how we do things in this country, and probably get some votes back home, even, if you can believe it.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. We have a next question by Lori. She is asking, what are going to be the next step for ANCA for the next few years? Okay.
To translate the Armenian genocide recognition into actual policy that supports and sustains the viability of Armenia, that challenges Turkish and Azerbaijani aggression against the Armenian people. So that's very important. We'll move into the education sphere and encourage greater American education through our public schools. We'll lock in remembrance through memorials and museums, things of that sort. And we'll draw the very tight connection between what happened in 1915 and what happened in 2021. In terms of Artsakh, we'll fight for the release of the prisoners, for humanitarian assistance, for the protection of our churches, for the investigation into the U.S. parts that were used in the drones, the Bayraktar drones that were deployed by Azerbaijan, Turkish drones deployed by Azerbaijan against Artsakh. So we'll be active on the full range of those issues. And then in the U.S.-Armenia realm, we want a reset in relations, a little bit less lecturing, maybe a lot less lecturing, and a lot more support, material support for the security and survival of Armenia. It is, again, I'm repeating myself on it, but during the war itself, to hear lectures on democracy as Armenians were being slaughtered across Artsakh, in the absence of any such lecturing to Azerbaijan. Not only no lecturing on, why their, hereditary monarchy is not the best form of government, but not even a word about Azerbaijan. Will you stop killing Armenians? Will you stop bombing churches? Will you stop rocketing apartment complexes? So we need a fundamental reset, and Azerbaijan needs to understand that its conduct against the Armenians of Artsakh was unacceptable, that they will be held to account for it, and that the U.S. will no longer turn a blind eye to that type of aggression. And I think that applies equally to Turkey.
Okay. We then have a question from Nancy. She's asking about Armenian youth. What impact does the Armenian youth have in the Haitad generally?
Haitad has always been a youthful enterprise, one that reinvents itself. And the AYF here, the Armenian Youth Federation here, is deeply involved in the ANC work at the federal level, at the state level, at the regional level. They're active in each and every one of our chapters. We have 2 youth programs that we feel very, very strongly about, and we invest a lot of time and a lot of money, a huge amount, in fact. Like for every dollar that we spend on today, we're investing a dollar for tomorrow. And the 2 programs we have are internship programs where young Armenians come and spend a summer or a semester in Haitad, and they learn everything about our system and how the system works. And they take from that, we hope, a desire to not just continue our work, but to reinvent our work, to take it to the next level, to meet the challenges of a new age, because only young people are going to be able to do that. So that's our internship program, and that exists in DC, in the Eastern US, and the Western US. The Western especially has a very, very large internship program. Then we also have something called the Capital Gateway Program, which is young people who have graduated from university and want to start a job in politics or policy or media or government. It's not always easy to do that because they don't know people in Washington, they have no friends, they don't have a job, they don't have a place to live. Well, we provide housing, free housing, we provide job training, provide introductions, we provide a network of fellow job seekers. And what we found is that within 3 months, almost all of them can find a good job, a good first job. It's not going to be a great job, but it's going to be a good job, the first step on the ladder. And then, once they get their first paycheck, we send them on their way, and we bring a new person into our building. We have a building for this purpose with 8 bedrooms right downtown in DC. And in this way, we have introduced hundreds of Armenians into the American political system, and they will become the congressional aides. They will become the diplomats, we hope. They will become the future legislators. They will become the experts who work in the think tanks and for the universities and for the newspapers, things of that sort. So what we've learned over the years, and I think that the French community is in many ways ahead of us in this regard, that we need to become part of the fabric of decision-making. We can't just be lobbyists asking for things. We need to be sitting at the table. We knock on the door, but we want the door to be opened sometimes by another Armenian. And that's one of our goals. It makes us very happy when that happens.
We have another question about Syunik. It's coming from Nishte. He's asking, could we expect a sudden attack on Syunik? Could the Armenian government already have signed another agreement? What would we do if that happens?
These are really, really good questions. Some of the sort of the military security and defense of Armenia is obviously like a primary concern for diasporans and certainly for the Haitad movement. Our ability to, we operate in the diaspora and in the civic realm. There's important work to be done to support Armenia in the military realm. It's done through different channels. So we're, as a community, as a spirit, as a nation, as a organization, we're deeply committed to the security of Armenia, and important things are being done. Our work is more in the political track and the diaspora track. Is it possible that the government of Armenia has agreed to things that they've not shared with the Armenian people? The answer is yes. I think that the history of the past 6 months has shown that. And if Nejda and others are concerned about these types of things, first about Azerbaijan's aggression or Turkey's aggression, he's absolutely justified in being concerned about that. It's an existential threat to our people. And if there are concerns about how well the Armenian government at the very top has managed this, I mean, I think those are certainly justified and should be the topic of, I think, robust discussion among Armenians worldwide, the electorate in Armenia and Armenians around the world. I don't think anyone looks at these past 6 months and gives a high mark to the Pashinyan government. I don't think anybody, even members of the government, would, rate their activities highly. I think it's been, by and large, one setback after another.
We got a question from Nairi. She's asking about cultural genocide. She's saying, what can we do to try and make the cultural genocide stop? What actions can we take to alert the international community on this aspect? We recently heard that the dome of the Armenian Church of Shushi was destroyed by Azerbaijan. What can we do about that?
Short of physically stopping them from doing it, our work must be in the civic realm, and that's frustrating because Azerbaijan has shown that they simply don't care. They show that with the destruction, the desecration of the Jufa cemetery. They've shown that in countless other instances. Turkey has a century-long record of doing exactly this, just gladly, proudly destroying Armenian heritage. There are efforts underway. One is by Cornell and Purdue University to monitor these sites, and that's certainly very welcome and deserves everyone's support. There are other efforts as well to push UNESCO, but the fact of the matter is, look at UNESCO. Look at UNESCO's response on Jufa. It's non-existent. It was. You wonder why we have an organization like that. Why have an organization that claims to protect World Heritage when World Heritage is desecrated before their eyes, and they can't utter the will to say anything. So the sad reality is that Armenian heritage behind Turkish and Azeri lines is in great peril. We should make every effort to draw the eyes and the attention of the world to that desecration. But let's be realistic and understand that the world's track record on this score has not been great. Very, very frustrating. Very frustrating. Very painful.
Yes. Maybe one last question. Let's be optimistic. What can we do to help ANCA? What can the Armenian community do in France, in different parts of the world? What can we do to work together, maybe much more than what we're doing now?
Sure, I would say support the work of Haitad in France. That's the most important thing you can do. There's Asfazi Korzna, Surp Korzna. It's holy work. It's difficult work, and as I mentioned earlier, there's no easy fix. There's no one action we can take or one check that we can write that will just fix things. It's our destiny, as it turns out, to work over the longer term and to make investments in the political world, to take concerted action, to take smart action in working with legislators and politicians and diplomats and experts. Right? That's the work that we do. It isn't always going to return the result that you want this day, this week, this hour, but it is our path forward. So with all the challenges, and I speak to the people listening now, with all the challenges of organizational life, with all the challenges and frustrations that come with working in a political system against very heavy opposition, recognize that this work is essential. And that if it's difficult, it's okay because it's worthwhile. So step up, help with a donation, help Haitad with a donation, help them with your volunteer hours, talk about the positive work that's being done on social media. Figure out the best way that you can be helpful, but be helpful because ultimately organizing is going to be our salvation. Chadens talked about unity as our salvation. He certainly was right. We need to be united, but there's an equally strong argument to be made that organizing is what will save us. That we must work in concert toward shared aims, and that is we've done that. There are times in our history we can look to and say, like, look at Avaraj, look at Sardarabad. These are great examples. We need more examples like that where we step up, work together, get the job done. Haitad is leading the way. We need your help, so please lend a hand.
Well, thank you very much, Aram. Thank you for your time. I need to say that we have a lot of questions, but we're running out of time because we still have questions that I like. But you talked already about that, so I'm sorry if I didn't pick your question. Thank you very much, Aram. Thank you again. Thank you for your time. And just Barskernit Gadar, and let's keep up the good work, and we're going to succeed. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Anaid.